What are you gonna do to change this?
I'm trying to get in there and...
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Speak to me direct.
I want to end poverty.
They just shot us up.
I need y'all to make the fucking noise. Whose street? Our street. Whose street? Our street. Whose street?
We have to deal with structural racism, which means we got to end poverty.
Right.
If we don't do the work to actually end poverty, we're going to keep criminalizing it,
right,
and the cycle will continue.
When people started to rally behind what had happened around Breonna Taylor, Charles was at the tip of the spear.
Breonna was ours. She was our child.
Right.
She was our sister.
Right.
Now we gonna tell you why we here, and then we gonna march and we gonna shake these streets up.
No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. Let us pray.
Again.
Is this too dark? Is that better? Still better.
I mean, you know, if you put on some soft music and light a couple of candles, I'd appreciate it. I know it's a little bright, dark here too. Let me just.
Gotta get the poster in there.
Yeah, yeah, of course. From the hood to the holler. And let's just say while we started, okay, Pat?
Yes.
Because I often make that mistake where I forget to mention it and we just start talking. And I want to mention right off the top that, let's see, opening in LA, New York, and select theaters on September 16th, correct? And then on digital platforms on September 30th.
Yes.
Follows the story of candidate. And he's actually already, wait, when he starts off, he's already was he a state, what was he, a state rep? He was a rep, state rep?
He was a state rep 2 years ago, and
Okay.
that was the race 2 years ago, yeah.
And he's running for, of course, senator, U.S. senator in Kentucky against Rand Paul. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, you couldn't have either polar opposites of human beings in this race, but
right. I mean, I checked out your radio station, so awesome. Got to listen to it this morning. It's really good.
Yeah, they've got some really good music on there. You know, it's just nice. It's just, you don't get that very hand selected, you know, crafted, curated, and with, you know, as much attention to new young artists, like, you know, whether it's like somebody like Allison Russell or, you know, Slim, what's the name? Trombone Shorty. I don't know. There's all they just have a very eclectic thing going on. I really appreciate that. Not just not everything's Willie and Dylan, although, you know, not complaining about them either. But.
Nope. Oh, thanks for jumping back on. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you. And, you know, for really, because that I was just like, oh, I mean, you know, moving things around, rescheduling, that's part of what happens with your kind of lifestyle and mine. But I don't like to do it so last minute typically. And unfortunately, I realized, oh, he's going to get on, so I better get on there. So that worked out well.
All right.
So had you? I mean, you've made political. You did some work for Vice Media on Bernie. Was that your entryway to this story? Like, did you discover Charles Booker's story through your work following Bernie around? What tell me a little bit more, because I haven't seen all your work. But
yeah, you know, we jumped on the road with Bernie Sanders. We did a film called Bernie Blackout, and it wasn't so much about Bernie Sanders as it was about, you know, the news media coverage and how much power and influence they have. You know, it's like, you know, we look at the cable news networks right now. I currently can't call them cable news networks because I believe they're all editorial kind of talk showy. So, and I think that's true on both sides of the fence. You know, we got done with Bernie Blackout, and we went on the road independently and chased that story down. When we got done, Vice made us an offer to come in and partner up and give us some money for posts, and then we had a quick turn and got that done. And COVID was happening at the time, and I remember coming back, and it happened. You know, Bernie Sanders, the end of that campaign happened so quick with Super Tuesday. It was just over like in a flash.
Yes,
COVID.
I remember it
And
well.
we were in post, and it was trying to turn this out, and we kept looking at this, you know, looking at Mitch McConnell and what was going on in Kentucky, and thinking, wow, man, you know, wouldn't that be something else if someone could, you know, really take on Mitch McConnell and beat him? And we did some research, and someone sent me a clip of Charles Booker, and I'd seen the great commercial from Amy McGrath. It was a, you know, she had a big rollout, and then someone sent me this kind of clip that was done, I think, by the Sunrise Movement, and
Hmm.
it just struck a chord. And I just said, wow, this guy's, there's something here. Want to give him a call? So I texted his campaign, and he texted me back and invited us to come out and capture what was going on the ground. And you know, super cool.
I requested him, and you know, he's obviously really busy right now, but who knows? Maybe he'll Zoom bomb this segment. We'll get lucky, and you know.
You know, it's so interesting because you would love talking to him because he's so busy and it's tough. But he
Yeah.
really is. He's one of those guys that just, he's so inspiring to talk to.
Right. I just thought, you know, since it's more about supporting, and this is not, I'm not being critical. I 100% understand with these things that I'm not at all taking it personally. I thought maybe there would be a better chance only because he would be coming on to support the documentary, you know, and not promoting his campaign, you know, that. So I thought, and he wouldn't have to worry about how he spoke about necessarily his campaign. Although with my big mouth, I might end up talking, because I was seeing a trend here between Bernie and what happened to him leading into Super Tuesday, and how the Democratic powers that be, they get behind Amy, right? They got behind Biden, and you know what I saw with the, you know, and then the kind of almost the collaboration between the media and the DNCC is really it was getting my goat a lot. I have to say, I was getting really burned. You know, obviously, just almost as much, I would say, than I would by the opposing party, because I felt like they would at least give the guy he's ahead. Like, you know,
Right.
get behind this guy. Maybe it's his time. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent.
No,
But
I think you're right on point. I think that's, you know, that's part of what the film's all about, is exactly that. And you know, getting, you know, one of the things that we like to do, you know, I'm really lucky. I work with some really talented filmmakers, and we work hard to do these independent films. And it's to kind of shine a light on stories that aren't being told. Because look, you know what? I mean, how many people are going to jump down there and tell, you know, the story of Charles Booker, when it's absolutely fascinating when you get down there and understand that? But the national media is not really covering stories like this. They did in the last, you know, couple days, you know, but I think you're right. It's even more troublesome in some aspects that you have a party that is basically kind of dictating the way things should be, when the ground support and the people are saying something differently. I mean, when you look at like how much money is being spent, you know, to, you know, I think Amy raised well over $50 million to Charles, you know, pennies, and he still came close. And it's, you know, I think people don't want to be spoken at. They want to be, you know, they want to participate in a conversation. And I think a lot of times when you look at these big committees, they're talking down to people. They're
right.
telling you, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And Charles is just trying to have a conversation with the people, and people react to that favorably. I know I do.
And so it's not a secret to say that your documentary, again, it's called From the Hood to the Holler, and you know, I think he's trying to reach across racial lines is what that title refers to, right, and specifically in the state of Kentucky, meaning poor, you know, poor or middle class, working class white people, poor middle to working class black people, all have the same um, desires and goals, and for themselves, their families, and and that's what he's trying to speak to, right? So, but he loses the race against Amy. That's kind of what the film covers. But then now, tell me how this happens, where he now is running against Rand Paul. How does that happen?
Yeah, so it's interesting, when
Even though it's not in the film.
yeah, it's like when we were shooting this, I had no idea. We got done and we're like, wow. As you saw the film, it's like we thought that he was going to win the primary at the last second. And we thought like, oh my God, this is really happening. And then it didn't. And we continued on with the story. And it was really tough as an independent filmmaker. It's like you had to choose like, okay, now I'm going to go back and then we get all these interviews and really bring the story together. And while that was happening, you look on the calendar and then you realize that just 2 years away is the other U.S. senators up for election, which is Rand Paul. Never occurred to me. So then we just kept following the story, and now he's running against Rand Paul. And he did win the primary this time around. It wasn't against Amy McGrath.
Right, obviously.
Yeah, he was the favorite going in. And I think the work that he and his movement, it's really paid off. I mean, it's, I think a lot of people say, does he really have a shot to win there? But if you go out to Kentucky, you can actually see it happening. People are coming out to the rallies. They're excited.
It could be another Georgia, right? With
Sure could. I mean, nobody thought that Warnock could win in Georgia, and he did. And so, I think anything's possible, and it's exciting. It's like, look, Charles has those lived experiences. He has, like as you pointed out, look, this is about uniting people from the holler and the hood, the rural and the urban, both working class elements of Kentucky, and at least trying to show like there's a lot more that people have in common than they don't. And people can't argue that. I mean, you can argue about abortion, you can argue about guns, but once you argue about the basic things, not these like hot button issues that just rip us apart, and I think that's, and I can't speak for Charles or the campaign, but I think that's what I've always noticed what the campaign's about. It's finding ways to unite people and lift their voices up together instead of trying to like, hey, you're against this. That's all. That's the media wants us to do that, I think, in my opinion.
That's and that's why the documentary is as compelling as it is. It's really a compelling story, and he's so reasonable. He's a very reasonable guy. He's very relatable. I regret he couldn't do this, but did I mention that? Anyway, I have questions for you as a filmmaker, as somebody who has approaches a film like this, maybe both objectively at times and subjectively. Like, how do you chose, obviously, or you ended up making films about particular candidates. You didn't make a film about Mitch McConnell, or I don't know, like Donald Trump, for instance. But so I'm wondering, do you go in thinking about how to remain as objective as possible when you're making these types of films, or maybe going with a kind of a real conviction is the way to go?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. In all honesty, when we were editing Bernie Blackout, I was, looking at the race in Kentucky, and I remember with Adam, he's with the producer and editors on the film. I remember being the edit bay. I'm like, we should do a film like 10 reasons why I hate Mitch McConnell or something, like it was some silly name like that, like
only 10.
Yeah, no, I know, or like it was something like that, or why I'm not going to vote for Mitch McConnell, and then so it kind of took on a life of its own, and then I looked into the race a little more. So in full disclosure, it's like I was intrigued not just by Charles Booker and his politics, but I was intrigued about how entrenched the system is. And I think going into a deeper dive about how the National Committee and the DNC controls a lot of these primaries. But what really happened, and that's in full disclosure, it's like I thought that was an interesting premise. But what I learned along the way is became much more than kind of that premise. It became about Charles Booker. It became a portrait documentary. It became about this guy finding, this young man finding his voice as a leader and emerging, as not just a politician, but a Kentuckian, an activist in the street. And that I didn't know was going to happen. I went into it thinking like this political thing. And what happened was Breonna Taylor, the Black Lives Matter. And I mean, it's like, and even now it's like the whole Breonna Taylor thing, the search warrant was on fraudulent, pretense. I mean, it's like the whole thing is absolutely amazing now. But yeah, I went into it with the question of how much control does the DNC have in these primaries? Is it right for the national committee to tell the state who to vote for and narrow their choice and give all their money to? But I discovered a lot more. That's the cool thing. Sometimes you just kind of like jump in there and you go where the story takes you, and then you don't know.
Right. Well, that's not uncommon making a documentary. You have your intention. I mean, or you make plans and God laughs, or docs laugh, or whatever. The doc gods, laugh, because things can go so. And if you're listening, and if you're, you be able to pivot, or rethink what you're making a film about. I mean, and it can be really satisfying. I have to imagine. I was just wondering, because I'm trying to, really think about who you're trying to reach. I mean, like, how do you reach people that wouldn't vote for Charles Booker? Well, the title's a good start. I mean, just even the title is compelling for anybody that might live in Kentucky. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's, this film wasn't, for Charles Booker. You know what I mean? The story was the story. And, I think that's, I personally support Charles, and I think he's a great candidate for Kentucky, and I think he'll do wonderful things. But this was never about how do we get Charles elected. This was trying to capture a moment in time that I thought was significant. And, and here we are. So it's like, I had no idea. Like, I thought like this election would have been over. I didn't even see it on the calendar that 2 years later that he'd be running against Rand Paul. I thought this would be about a person that on paper lost an election, but what he really did was start a movement, and that movement is from the hood to the holler. And so that, at the end of the film, it's like you start to understand, it's like, okay, it was, as Kelsey says, it was bigger than the election, because they're not,
right.
They're smart people. They know the odds that are stacked against them. And so there's a movement. They go into this blind,
The movement is bigger than that, than the this particular election, or it's bigger than the documentary. It's something that's grown from it, organic, and I'll put the the documentary, the film's website at the end, but I'll also put the movement, the Hood to the Holler has its own website and its own, and how you can get on board, or if you're interested in learning more, you can go to there too and learn and support what they're doing. And because I would like, it's that this is where change will come from, and not from, I mean, I don't want to sound cynical, but politicians are interested in, have different priorities, let's say, than that's the difficulty. First you're a candidate, then you become a politician. But if you make the change, it doesn't have to be that way, right?
It's a really good point. First you're a candidate, then you become a politician. That's good.
Yeah. So,
it's true.
First,
I mean,
first you're just, once you're dealing in politics, it just gets very different.
It's interesting. I know recently they had a lot of flooding in Appalachia and in Kentucky, and I read somewhere, and again, I don't speak for the campaign. This is just me as an observer, but I read somewhere in one of the newspapers how Senator Rand Paul was trying to, hammer on Charles Booker and say, oh, he's trying to politicize this, and he's trying to go down there, right now they don't need politicians. And Charles is down there with his organization passing out water and trying to help out. And he said something that really struck a chord with me. He said, I'm down here not as a candidate. I'm down here as a neighbor, as a friend, as a Kentuckian, and I'm not sure the exact words, but it totally makes sense. And I think that's the difference. It's like, when you look at the difference between those two is, where is Rand Paul? And is he a candidate, is he a politician, or is he a Kentuckian? Is he a neighbor?
He's on his lawnmower somewhere, like getting into.
I mean, we do know his neighbor beat him up. That's all I can say.
That's all I know.
That's all I know. I don't even know the full story. I don't even know if I should say that because I don't even know what it means.
I think he graduated from dental school. Maybe is that something? I heard that.
Well, I mean, look. I mean, this guy. I mean, we can't even get a debate. It's like, they're supposed to have a debate, and I haven't heard that there's going to be one. And, you can't really have elected officials that aren't willing to entertain a conversation or have a debate. So that's troublesome. But I think what blows my mind, I think the one way that, Charles Booker, among other ways, but it's like, is just break down Rand Paul. I mean, here's a guy that's prided himself on the idea of being a libertarian, but, he is against abortion, and he's for having the government have control over a woman's body, a person's body. And it's like that's not being a libertarian.